DC the Boys, Alabama Prisoner Profiles. What's going on with y'all, man? Make sure y'all like, subscribe, share, hit that join button, and become a member of the channel for 2 smackaroos a month, man. Quit playing. Now, I want to give a shout out to that boy JJ for the Cash App. I appreciate you, bro. We working, y'all know what's going on. Now, I got plenty of stuff to do videos on, right? But some of this stuff is kind of repetitive, even if it may be separate incidences. Like, I'm trying to get more folks to come on the show, so if y'all are interested, once again, hit me up on the Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all that type stuff, instead of just putting your resume in the comment section. I'm tired of seeing that shit, right? Now, today, right, I'm going to be bringing y'all, I saw this article, right, about a man who survived a botched execution back in 22 that has been given a new date by Co.AgMusic to die by nitrogen hypoxia. Let's hop right into that right now. Montgomery, Alabama. Governor Co.AgMusic Wednesday announced the time frame for the execution of an Alabama inmate, Allan Eugene Miller. According to a memo from Ivey's office, the execution time window will begin at 12 a.m. on Thursday, September 26, 2024, and expires Friday, September 27, 2024 at 6 a.m. The execution will be carried out via nitrogen hypoxia. Miller was convicted of unaliving 3 men during a 1999 workplace shooting. The Alabama Supreme Court recently granted a state attorney general's request for an execution date for Allan Eugene Miller, who survived a 2022 lethal injection attempt. Quote, although I have no plans to grant clemency in this case, I retain my authority under the Constitution of the state of Alabama to grant a reprieve or commutation if necessary at any time before the execution is carried out, said Ivey. Oh, Lord, that's crazy. Now, a little bit about Bro's case. You know what I'm saying? Do some little dick, because the case was interesting to me, so this is why I'm bringing it to y'all, right? Here we go. Defense attorneys for Allan Eugene Miller, accused of fatally shooting 3 people at 2 offices he worked, say that Allan is, quote, at very best slow, unquote, and should be in a mental health facility rather than prison. Shelby County DA Robbie Owens disagrees and said he would, quote, absolutely seek the death penalty for the lethal driver killer. Miller, 34, pleaded innocent by reason of mental disease or defect in the shooting deaths of co-workers Lee Holbrooks, 32, Scott Yancey, 28, at Ferguson Enterprises, and the shooting death of Terry Jarvis, 39, at Post Air Gas. Miller was a truck driver for Ferguson and worked at Post Air Gas until January. Holbrooks and Yancey were Ferguson's employees, and Jarvis was a supervisor at Post Air Gas. Miller was a Ferguson truck driver at the time of the incident and was laid off from Post Air Gas in January. A friend of Holbrooks said he was angry because he felt Holbrooks, another driver, was receiving longer and better routes than he was. Miller reportedly had a history of fighting with fellow employees and once was fired for fighting on the job. The Birmingham News, citing interviews with Miller's former co-workers and employers, also reported that he had repeated shouting matches with one of the 3 men he is charged with unaliving on August 5th. But the newspaper said Miller's former colleagues also described him as a hard worker who kept to himself. Quote, Allan didn't bother anybody, unquote, according to his mother. When Allan Eugene Miller left for work in Alabama, no one knew or predicted what was about to happen. The unmarried Miller lived with his mother, Barbara Miller, in Billingsley. She said her son, quote, went off to work just as he always does this morning. He left there like he always does, with a 7-Up and a couple of biscuits and sausages. But when he got to the office early Thursday, August 5th, 1999, Miller had much more than his lunch on his mind. Miller worked at Ferguson Enterprises, a heating and air conditioner firm. It was there he struck his first deviated from his normal daily routine. Miller had entered the unlocked Ferguson building with his gun drawn that morning. The first person he encountered was Lee Holbrooks. Quote, as a result of whatever was said, shots were fired, the DA assigned to the case said. Holbrooks, 32, was unalived by numerous shots to the chest and then one fatal shot to the head. Miller then went down a hall and shot Christopher Yancey, 28, to death. then ran out of the building after another employee entered, saw the gun, and bravely yelled, quote, "Don't shoot me, I haven't done anything." Officers arrived only minutes after being summoned at 7:04 a.m., but Miller had already moved on. While officers secured the crime scene, the town's 911 dispatcher got a second emergency call concerning a shooting at Post Air Gas Incorporated, a gas firm 5 miles from Ferguson Enterprises. A third victim was found there. Miller had driven 5 miles south on US 31 to Post Air Gas, where he had worked until January, and shot the assistant manager, 39-year-old Terry Jarvis. Miller was apprehended after a high-speed chase on a nearby highway shortly after police arrived at the shooting scenes after 7 a.m. Police found a handgun on the seat of his car. Quote, "They were able to take the suspect into custody after a brief scuffle," unquote, a spokesman for the police said. So what made Allan go off? According to a former employee and friend of one of the victims, Allan was very jealous of the 2 victims at Ferguson. Chad Ingram, the workmate, said Miller thought Holbrooks was getting the preferred longer driving assignments at Ferguson. Ingram told the BHAM News he knew Miller was angry with Holbrooks over the routes before the shooting happened. Quote, "I guess Miller felt Scott and Lee were in cahoots about getting better routes," Ingram said. But what about the other victim? Christopher Yancey was a dispatcher at Ferguson, and why did he drive all the way to the other building? Miller and Jarvis had repeated shouting matches in the 5 years Miller worked there. Jarvis, as assistant manager, was responsible for making sure deliveries were made and gave Miller orders. Quote, "Allan would refuse to deliver it," unquote, a former colleague said. Quote, "Allan didn't like to take orders from Terry." Is that all? Oh yeah, he was laid off earlier this year by Post Air Gas because of economic downsizing, right? Any other reason? Well, a witness to this unaliving said Miller had yelled at Jarvis, quote, "I'm tired of your rumors about me." The police would still haven't told anyone what these rumors may be or if it was just paranoia on Miller's behalf. Were there any signs he'd go off? I guess there were. A few years ago, he got into a fight at work. 2 guys started to make fun of him, calling him a redneck. His old boss commented in a local newspaper, quote, "He didn't start it, but he sure finished it. He took care of both of them." What about his childhood? Any clues there? This is where we see what was going on. Miller was born in Chicago, the middle child of 7 to whom have died. He had multiple head injuries from falls as a child, suffered continual headaches which were treated with goody powders, said his mother. When he was 7, Miller's family moved from Chicago to Birmingham area. He attended elementary schools in Birmingham's West End, attended Midfield High School, and graduated from Trinity High School in Euless, Texas. Quote, "He never brought a girl home and never talked about any girls," unquote, Mrs. Miller said. Quote, "I heard him tell his brother one time that all women are interested in is money and cars." He wasn't capping. Man, was not capping. After high school, Miller considered joining the military. His mother said they wanted him to lose weight and he didn't want to lose weight. What about history of mental problems in the family? The former owner of Enterprise Grocery, Patricia Cuddy, said that Miller would only answer direct questions. He never initiated conversations, unlike his father, Ivan Miller, who often came in quoting the Bible and predicting doom for sinners. So how has Allan been since he was arrested? His mother, who has visited him in prison, says he's only concerned about missing his favorite television shows. So at least the thought of a murder trial isn't bothering him. And what about the trial? All I know, he pled innocent by reason of mental disease or defect. This has been a pretty cool page. What about some blah, blah, blah. A neighbor of Miller's was surprised at his arrest and said the suspect had always been, quote, real nice. Quote, "We leave for work about the same time. He always speaks," she says. Quote, "He doesn't strike you as a fella who would do something like that. They say he is done." And you don't get any more cliche than that. Jury recommends death. June 17, 2000. A Shelby County jury deliberated for only 20 minutes about finding Allan Eugene Miller guilty. They later recommended the death penalty. Shelby County Circuit Judge Al Croson said he would schedule final sentencing later. He can either accept or reject the jury's suggestion. Miller, 35, showed no reaction as the verdict was read. During the trial, his lawyers had all but conceded his guilt in the August 5, 1995 shootings in the Birmingham suburb of Pelham. During closing arguments Saturday, prosecutor Gordon Ledner told jurors the victims had at least one thing in common. Miller wanted them all unalived. Speaking as jurors looked at the photos taken inside Ferguson Enterprises. State forensics expert Angelo Dellamana testified Holbrook's crawled more than 20 feet down the hall despite being shot 3 times in the chest, once in the face and once in the right shoulder. Let me hit that boy up. The fatal shot was fired from less than 2 inches away. I'm playing with them folks. Defense attorney Mickey Johnson conceded the evidence was convincing, but described Miller as a, quote, tortured soul who suffers from a personality disorder. A psychological evaluation found Miller believed he had been slighted by, quote, perceived events, he said. Before opening fire at each place, Miller made comments about the victims spreading rumors about him, testimony showed. Miller believed in the death penalty. He just believed he could impose it, said Johnson. Johnson criticized prosecutors for showing dozens of gruesome crime scene autopsy photos, calling the display, quote, excessive. He rested his case Friday without calling any witnesses to counter a mountain of prosecution evidence, including an eyewitness to one slaying and testimony liking Miller's handgun to shell casings and slugs found at the crime scene. Miller showed little reaction during 2 days of testimony. He didn't speak to his mother or any relatives seated a few feet behind him. He craned his head once for a better look at one of the crime scene photos. The 2 attacks came 1 week after one of the worst massacres in U.S. history. And they're talking about that July 29th, the Atlantic brokerage firm where they hit up 13 people, right? Then dude took his own right. Crazy. And there y'all have it, man. That boy Allan Millers, man, they finna, you know what I'm saying? K.I.B. said ain't no clemency for that boy. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section, man. Them trucking companies and stuff like that, and we're before their issues. Cutthroat, and we all know co-workers can get all the way up under your skin. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments, man. DC The Voice, Alabama Prisoner Profiles.